You think you know what a Viking looks like. Horned helmet, wild red hair, screaming on a long ship, burning down a monastery. That image is almost completely wrong. The horned helmet never existed. It was invented by a costume designer for a German opera in 1876. Not a single Viking helmet with horns has ever been found. And here is the bigger truth. The vast majority of Vikings never raided anything. They were farmers. They woke up early, they fed their animals, they fixed their fences, they went to bed tired. The word Viking actually referred to an occupation, going on a sea voyage, not an entire people. Most Norse people never went Viking at all. So what did the real daily life actually look like?
It started before sunrise. Viking society ran on daylight. In summer, that meant long, productive days. In winter, it meant short, dark, cold ones. The first thing most Vikings did every morning was tend to their livestock. Cows, pigs, sheep, goats. Animals were not a luxury. They were survival. Losing your herd in winter could mean death. So the animals came first, before breakfast, before anything. The longhouse they lived in was shared with those animals in winter. The body heat of cattle kept the temperature survivable. The smell was something modern people cannot imagine. The longhouse itself was everything. It was the bedroom, kitchen, dining room, workshop, and barn all under one roof. No separate rooms, no privacy. Multiple generations of the same family, plus slaves, plus animals, all in one long, dark, smoky hall. Most Vikings were farmers, full stop. Archaeological evidence from hundreds of Norse settlements confirms the same picture. Fields of barley, rye, and oats, kitchen gardens with onions, cabbage, and herbs, fruit trees, beehives for honey. The main meal of the day was usually a thick stew. Meat, vegetables, and grains cooked together over the central fire and eaten from wooden bowls. Bread was dark and dense, made from barley or rye because wheat did not grow well in the Norse climate. They drank ale and mead, not because they were always feasting, but because water from rivers was often unsafe. Fish was eaten constantly, herring especially, dried, salted, smoked, preserved in every way possible to last through winter. Skyr, a thick strained dairy product almost identical to modern Icelandic yogurt, was a daily staple. The Vikings were obsessed with dairy. Now here is the part that surprises almost everyone. Vikings were clean. Not just clean by medieval standards, clean by the standards of their neighbors, who found them suspiciously obsessive about grooming. An English chronicler named John of Wallingford complained in the 11th century that Viking men were stealing English women by combing their hair, bathing regularly, and changing their clothes too often. Archaeological digs across Scandinavia have found enormous quantities of grooming tools: combs, razors, tweezers, ear scoops, all made from bone and antler. Vikings bathed at least once a week, something almost unheard of in the rest of medieval Europe. Saturday in Old Norse is called Logadagar, literally washing day. The image of the filthy, barbaric Viking is backwards. They were among the most hygiene-conscious people in medieval Europe. Viking society was also far more equal than most people assume. Not equal by modern standards. They kept slaves, called thralls, captured from raids. But free women in Viking society had rights that were extraordinary for the time. A Viking woman could own property. She could inherit land. She could manage a farm entirely on her own while her husband was away, sometimes for years. She could request a divorce for reasons including poverty, violence, or abandonment. She wore keys on her belt as a symbol of status. The keys to the longhouse, to the food stores, to everything that kept the family alive. Some women went further. The sagas describe shield maidens who fought. Archaeological evidence has backed this up. A Viking Age burial discovered in Sweden, long assumed to be male because it contained weapons, was revealed by DNA analysis in 2017 to belong to a woman. Children in Viking society grew up fast. There was no childhood in the modern sense. By age 5 or 6, children were already contributing, herding animals, carrying water, learning the skills they would need to survive. By their early teens, boys were expected to work alongside men. Girls were managing significant domestic responsibilities. Play existed. Archaeologists have found small wooden toys and games, but it was always woven around work, not separate from it. The evenings were when Viking culture came alive. After the work was done, the family gathered in the longhouse around the central fire. This is when the sagas were told. The Norse had no television, no books in most households, no writing beyond runes used for short inscriptions. Their entire cultural memory, their history, their mythology, their laws, their family histories existed in oral form, passed down by storytelling around the fire. The sagas we still read today were not written down until centuries later. Before that, they were memorized and performed. Board games were popular. The Norse played a strategy game called Hnefatafl, similar to chess, by firelight. Music was played, poetry was composed and recited. These were not peasants sitting in silence. These were people with a rich interior life, gathered in warmth against the darkness.
And then there was the Thing. The Thing was the Viking assembly, a gathering of free men held regularly to make laws, settle disputes, and make collective decisions. It is one of the earliest examples of democratic governance in European history. Everyone with a grievance could speak. Decisions were made by the community. Even the most powerful chieftains were bound by the assembly's rulings. The Icelandic Althing, established in 930 AD, is the oldest functioning parliament in the world. So here is the real picture. The Viking who woke up this morning, the real one, not the one from the movies, fed his animals in the dark, ate porridge with his family, spent the day repairing fences or working a fishing net, bathed on Saturday, told stories to his children by firelight, and fell asleep in a smoky hall that smelled of cattle. He probably never raided anyone. He never wore a horned helmet. He was, by the standards of his time, unusually clean, unusually democratic, and if his wife had anything to say about it, unusually accountable. The version of Vikings that Hollywood sold you was invented in the 19th century to make opera costumes more dramatic. The real version is stranger, more human, and honestly, more interesting. They were just people, living their lives, in a longhouse that smelled of smoke and animals and bread.